Hey guys, how are you doing? Welcome to a brand new series. This is a good one. As always, this is a Patreon exclusive series. No one else will see it apart from you guys here. This is a really good one. You'll have seen in the titles and in the title of the post, I suppose. And I've probably already mentioned it in the past anyway, but as I film this is sort of new and exciting. I have been commissioned to paint and put together a statue of, if I can do this right, that guy, Sark from Tron. I've got a couple of images. There's that one which basically shows what he looks like, this one which shows the disc on his back, and then there's this one which shows his glowing. It's a good image. I think when he grows bigger, but it's a good one to show how his circuits glow, because that will be important. So that guy, it's a statue that's 1/6 scale, so it's about that big. Normal size, normal action figure size. What's normal action figure size? About that big. And it's in pieces, so we'll be putting it together. But we'll be painting it, and the exciting part is that I've got some UV glowing paint that when you shine a black light on it, it glows, and that's what the circuitry is getting painted in. So when the client puts it on the shelf and hides a UV bulb somewhere, behind a book or something, and turns it on, Sarks circuitry should glow bright red. So it's exciting and it's new, never done this before, and I'm looking forward to it, and it should be good for you guys as well. I think it'll be a shorter one. It's not going to be anything like the Clint Eastwood one, which went on for 6 million episodes, because this is largely single colour. He's essentially grey, but if I can go back to those pictures, so he's basically a mid-grey, and sometimes he looks grey with a hint of purple. You can see it there. Sometimes he looks grey with a hint of, that's purple again. Sometimes he looks grey with a hint of green. It depends what shot in the film he's in. He's essentially mid-grey though. And what I've got to be careful is, apart from burping when I'm trying to film, how rude. What I've got to be careful is I have to try and make it so that it works if the client displays the piece in daylight or on a lit up shelf, or if they use the glowing effect and do it in a dark room and make it glow. So if I was to paint him to make him look, I'm looking over there because I've got pictures of him on my other screen. I've got my camera there, one computer screen there, and another computer screen there. So when you see me looking around, I'm looking at my screens. If I painted him so he would look right in a daylit, bulb lit shelf environment, I would paint him a certain shade of grey to match that purpley grey colour. That's a bit dark. He's quite dark in some scenes. Yeah, sort of like that. I would paint him to be that colour. But then, if the client put the statue in a dark room or on a dark shelf in a corner and lit it with a UV bulb, he would look too dark. But then if I painted him to look right in a dark room, he would essentially be white. So then when the lights are on, he would look too bright. So it's trying to find the balance of making him look okay in both environments, which I think we can do. He will be like a light to mid-grey, and that should look good in daylight and also in the dark when his circuits are glowing, which will be the main effect. How am I going to do this? I didn't think about this in advance. Let me bring my camera around. I've not used this in a while, so it's probably not pointing in the right place. Let me see if I can change to the overhead camera. Right, to show you what I wanted to show you, let me get that microphone a little bit further back out of the way. If I can zoom that camera out, hang on, give me a second. Zoomy, zoomy, zoom, zoom. Zoom, there you go. So this is the board that I normally paint on. I've got my palette, got my paints, got my brushes, got my water, got all of that stuff. And I normally just sit here and paint, you know, whatever head I'm working on. Now, because I've got lots of pieces here, if I pick this up, you can sort of see it off the side of the screen already. I've got a board with all of these pieces, which I will show you in a second. How am I going to do this? I didn't think this through very well. You know what? Let me hold it and just bring it in like this. This microphone is really in the way at the moment. Okay, so look, here is the body. That's what it looks like. I've given him a coat of primer. I've done some sanding on him. I'm going to give him I'm going to be painting and obviously doing all the glowing circuitry, and I think I've figured out how I'm going to do that. So that's his body. We've got a round base, 2 arms, the thingy disc. What's it called? I forgot what that's called. A thingy disc. The 2 things that go on the side of his head, the thing that goes on the front of his head, the thing that goes across his jaw, and his other leg. So we've got those pieces. Now I'm going to put this to one side for a second while I talk about some stuff. I have already, to give the client more... Hang on, I'm not even in the corner. Hello. Right. To give the client more options when displaying him, I have installed some magnets. Now the hand can basically either have the frisbee disc thing, is it an info disc or something, ID disc, I can't remember what they're called. Everyone's going to be shouting at me and I'll look it up. Anyway, so you can sort of jam it between his fingers and he will hold the disc as if he's about to throw it, which is very cool. But then I thought, well, if we're doing that, how am I going to put it on his back? So essentially I drilled a hole into the disc and inlaid a magnet inside the disc, did the same on his back, and you can have that. So you can have it like that, or you can hold it. And I'm really pleased with how that works. I think that's really cool. So I've done that. I've essentially done the same with the arms. There's a magnet in there. There's a magnet inside the end of that post, because the statue was sculpted to be a certain pose, going by where that arm piece sat and how it laid against that piece and where the post, everything was designed so that it would sit pretty much like that. And I didn't like that pose particularly. I thought the arm was a bit too far back, a bit too far out. The client might like it like that, in which case it can be like that, but by putting magnets in it, it just gives a little bit more flexibility in how the arm can be posed. And not much, because once you do it too much, you'll see down there, you start to get gaps because the thing isn't designed to be moved around like that. It's not a ball joint, but it gives a little bit of flexibility. So they could have it a little bit further down, a little bit further out, a little bit, just a bit of movement so that the client can go, oh, I want it to be like that. And they can have it like that, or they can want it like that, and they can have it like that. So I've done that with the arms. The legs are going to be glued on because they need to be solid. So they're going to be properly 2-part epoxied on. The resin posts, I think, will be strong enough as long as they are glued in. I don't think they're going anywhere, because I will glue sort of the posts and around the surface and all of that, and that will essentially become one piece. They will become as strong as the resin themselves. And then all these little pieces, like the piece that goes on his head, like that, they will just be glued on. So this is the thing, and I'm really looking forward to this. So I've given it a coat of primer. I've done a bit of sanding in some places, like when I was working on the thing. That's going to be fine to just be painted over, because it's not going to be a high were, you know, it's not. There's no joint. It's not a posable action figure. It's a statue basically. It's going to be sat in the same place, and it's going to get a proper coat of protective varnish over it anyway. So it's going to be absolutely fine. So what I'm going to do is paint it now. The painting is sort of part of the problem. Oh, there's another thing. I drilled into one of the legs because he didn't have a way of standing up without potentially falling over. So I drilled into one of the legs, got like a really solid plastic post that's going to be, it's actually just jammed in there at the moment, and it's still solid, but that's going to be glued in there. Drilled a hole in there, and that's how he's going to stand up without falling over, so he's going to be quite solid there. Because he was just wobbling around, which is no good. So this base is designed to be like, you got things on the side, you got these things. That's designed to be like the ground that you see under and around Sark. Just it's on a smaller scale, but it's the same look. I think that was it. I think I've covered everything. Now the problem with painting it was, do I paint the whole thing and potentially get paint inside the circuitry, which I then have to dig out, because you know we're going to be painting the glow in the dark, not glow in the dark, the UV paint inside all the circuitry. Do I try and do it so I can just sort of paint over the circuitry and hope no one gets into it, or do I do it the complete pain in the backside way, which is get a small brush? Not all my brushes have got things on. Basically get a small brush, forget it, not this brush, but basically get a small brush and paint around each circuit piece and do it slowly. Now that's going to be a nightmare and will take weeks probably, because there's a lot of circuits all over this thing. Actually not sure the best way to do this. Ideally this would be better with an airbrush, I think, this part of it, because it's one colour over the whole thing. I am going to be doing shading, like if you look on his legs, see places like this, I'm going to be doing subtle, very subtle shading in and around all of these bits, and across the whole thing, but it's essentially going to be one colour, just with subtle shading added. It's not like Clint Eastwood where there was 15 different fabrics or anything. This is just one colour, one outfit with shadows. So the way that this has been sprayed with a can of primer, ideally I could do with mixing the colour that I need and then just going psh, psh, all over the whole thing, but I can't do that because I don't have an airbrush, because part of my whole thing is that I don't use airbrushes. I might have to change that. If I'm going to start getting more stuff like this, I might need to change that. I think I'm definitely going to do the UV circuitry afterwards, because that will just let me do them nice and neat inside, because they have all been sculpted out. All the pieces, all the bits that glow have all been nicely sculpted, so I can paint inside them, and I have lots of very thin brushes so I can do that. It's just, how do I paint it? Do I go over it with several thin layers and not really care about getting paint inside those bits and maybe just scrape them out afterwards if I need it, or do I try and paint around them in the first place, which will take longer? Right, give me a second. I should have done this beforehand, but I didn't. You know what? I don't know what I'm doing. I actually don't know. Just looking at a picture. I think I'm gonna just paint over the whole thing, but with thin layers, and when I'm done and I've got the colours how I want them, I will see how the glowy circuitry channels are. If they're not filled in and they're fine, we will go with it. If it feels like, you know what, I think they've got some of the paint has just made them not quite as deep, then I'll just get one of my sculpting tools and just get them back to how they were. I think that's how I'll do it. Because if I was to paint around every piece of circuitry on the whole figure, and then because I'm going to have to do 2 or 3 layers to get it to the right, because it's going to be thin paint. It's like everything I do. The music's getting loud. If I didn't want to mute it, there you go. If I did that 2 or 3 times and then had to paint the circuitry potentially 2 or 3 times, because I think there's going to be a white coat underneath and then a couple of layers of the UV paint. Yeah, that would probably take about 6 months of just sitting there going, oh, tiny details, and going mad. So I think I'm just going to paint the whole thing pretty much like I did with the spray. I probably should have tried to find a spray can that had the exact right colour. But I didn't, because I figured it's going to be a particular shade of light to mid grey with a hint of purple that I'm going for. And I just assumed, you know what, that's not going to exist, because I'm going to be going for a very specific colour. So, right. I think the way I'm going to do this, I'm not going to use this, not yet anyway. I will use this. Look how dirty this is. Well, not dirty. Look how well used this is. There you go. That's a better way of saying it. What I'm going to do at some point is do a video of me peeling this off. Because when you paint for so long and you use this and it just gets layers and layers and layers and layers of paint on it, it gets to a stage where you can like get a little bit and pull it and it all just peels off like a layer of rubber and you're left with a brand new palette underneath. It's so satisfying. It's the most satisfying thing ever. I'm going to use this later on when I'm doing the shading, the shadows, the subtle, shadows and highlights, and when I'm painting his face, which again is mid-grey, but his face, quite often, you'll see like his costume will be grey with a hint of purple, and his face is grey with a hint of green. So I'm going to do that just to give that screen accurate look. I'm going to use this then. For the main colour, I'm just going to mix it in this. It was just a plastic cup, which I cut off to just give me a little container. And I'm going to mix the paint in there because I'm going to need a fairly decent amount to go over the whole thing several times. So it's going to be fairly thin paint. And I didn't want to be, if I just mixed it in one of these small things, I figured I would end up having to remix the paint all the time and then having to try and mix the exact same colour again and again. I thought that's going to be a pain. So I'm just going to try and mix a colour and see if I can get it right, which will be fun. I'm going to open my... Now this first video is sort of mainly going to be trying to mix the colour and then starting to paint some of it. I just did a bit there. I basically built up part of the arm with some filler because I wanted the arm to slip. I didn't like the way the arms sat, so I just moved them a bit. I'm so tempted to just give everything another coat of primer before I start, because I've started making myself worry now that I'm thinking about it. Bits that I've sanded off when I was working on it, I've sort of made myself paranoid now. Yeah, but what if they move something and scratch it and it's not protected and the paint chips off? Oh, why did I do that to myself? Okay. This is actually officially a rubbish first video because I think I'm going to give everything another coat of primer just to make sure. And then we'll come back and paint. So this video is a... there was a hair just there that wasn't behaving. yeah, this is actually a really, really rubbish first video because I'm not doing any painting, and I could have just said that at the start and I didn't really need to have the overhead camera on so much. Never mind. I didn't think about things in advance. I've been doing loads of work lately and this was just one of the things. Okay, so look. Hi. You know what I'm doing now. I'm doing Sark from Tron. It's very exciting. It's going to be amazing. It's going to have glow-up circuitry. But I need to go away now and give it another coat of primer and just make sure that everything is actually ready to paint. And then we'll carry on. So I'll see you again in part 2. Oh my god, this was a bad video. But I've told you what I was doing, and that's sort of the main thing. What I will do, instead of having this be one of the 2 videos per week, I will do a second video as well. There'll be 2 videos on whatever day you get this. So there'll be this and part 2 where we actually start painting. Okay, I'm going and I'm going to give him a coat of primer and let it dry, and then we'll get back to it. So, where's I haven't used this recording program for a long time and I can't remember how to do my end titles. There you go. Wow, this was bad. Okay, I'm going. I will see you all. Well, you'll see me in about 5 minutes after you stop this and click on part 2, which will presumably be up at the same time. So, I will see you in a bit. You will see me. I will see you on another day because this is probably going to get painted on another day. You will see me in about 5 minutes. Wow, this was confusing. Alright, I'm definitely going now because I think I'm losing it a little bit. See you soon, guys, and yeah, see you in a bit. Go away. Bye.